if you want to shoot really pretty video and get it very cinematic, you want it to look like the movies, what you want to do is you want to basically pick your frame rate. So that's either going to be a 24 frames per second, 30 frames a second, 60 frames a second, whatever you decide to do. What the goal is to get that really filmic look is to shoot double your frames per second with your shutter speed. So if you're shooting at a 24p, you want to shoot at a 50th of a second. If you're shooting at 30p, you want to get to a 60th of a second. It's super easy to do in early morning light. If you're shooting at magic hour, you generally don't need neutral density because you can run your ISO down, you can have really pretty soft light, and you generally can shoot at a 60th of a second, and you can keep your aperture at, let's say, 5.6 or 4 or sometimes f8, and you're going to get that look that you're after. What happens when the day gets brighter and things are still going on, you still want to shoot and you still want to get that look, there's no way to cut the light enough to shoot at a 60th, because if you're shooting at ISO 100 in bright light, you're still going to be at 1/250th of a second or 1/500th of a second. You just have too fast of a shutter speed to give you that filmic look. The way to make that work is to use neutral density. And since we talk about it on the podcast all the time, I thought we would just show visually some of the different forms of neutral density that you can get for these different cameras. The most common would be the DSLR. I think that's what everybody's has access to. They're really good. They shoot awesome quality 4K. Some of them shoot 6K. It's the most effective and most cost-effective way to do it is to use a variable neutral density. The only caution that I have is you've got a $2,000 lens. Don't skimp on a neutral density filter. These things can run from, I've seen them as low as $50 all the way up to $500. The $500 versions are going to be what you want if you can afford it, just because you don't want to cheapen the quality of the glass in here by putting a cheap filter on the front. You might as well just have bought a cheap lens because it really won't matter. So spend the money, get a good variable neutral density. And the cool thing about these filters is they adjust. So I can get several stops of light cut by just twisting this. And you basically just have two polarizing filters and they're just working opposite one another. So as you guys can see, as I twist this, it gets darker. And if I go back, it gets lighter. So you can see the stops of light that you're going to gain by putting on this filter. And then when you cut it to almost no light, you can run ISO 100 and you can get to your 60th of a second at, say, 5.6 or f8 in somewhat bright light. Then the next one we have that I talk about a lot, and I don't think most people are very aware of this, but if you're using a big piece of glass, that's a big old piece of glass up front, and it doesn't even have threads in here, so you couldn't even screw on a filter if you wanted to. What they've done on these lenses is they have drop-in filters. What these lenses ship with is a clear filter, and then I've got neutral densities. And what I did is I went and bought extra drop-in filters so I didn't have to unscrew filters every time I wanted to do this. I could just pull it out of my pocket and just switch. If I'm going to shoot stills, I'll shoot with the clear. If I'm going to video, then I'm going to drop in. This is a 0.9 and then I have a 0.6. And I can get away with those in most situations to cut that light and get that really filmic look that I want. Another option for neutral density is these little rubber mat boxes. What I like about these, what I was talking about with the variable neutral density is you basically have two pieces of glass that are working together to cut the light to the camera so that you can get the shutter speed that you need. These are the same thing, only it's not a variable neutral density. This is a straight up filter that is just one setting. So this is a 1.2 neutral density. So you basically put it inside here, it kind of fits right in, but that just sits right in there, and then you can take this and put it right on the front of your lens, and then you're good to go. The bad thing about them is there's no variability, but if you're working in pretty consistent light, this is a good way to go, and it's going to be better quality because you're not shooting through two pieces of glass like you would with the graduated neutral density. You're just shooting right through a plate filter that is really high quality glass. Same thing goes for this as with the variable neutral density. You want to spend a little bit extra money and get the best ones you can get. I use Schneider and then I use Tiffin. And they have you can get these for $100 or you can get these for $500. You just got to figure out what fits in your budget. But the more you spend, the better the glass. Obviously, the better quality image you're going to get. So I love this little system, and they come in different sizes. The downside to these is they're kind of flimsy. And what happens is you have it on the front, and then you're walking along and it just falls off. So This is only good if you're gonna shoot off a tripod or if you're shooting out of a car. It's really good quality. So if you're in those situations, I would definitely recommend going with something like this. The last option is more of a cinematic approach, and that's using a real actual matte box that goes on the front of your camera and the front of your system. But as you can see, you have quite the involved system to actually make this whole rig work. It works off of rails that come off the bottom of the camera, and then this thing is centered in such a way that it centers right over the lens based off of the dimensions that are pretty standardized in the movie industry. And what I was able to do is run this matte box on a lens that has the internal focus, so you don't have a push-pull lens here. You can't use this system with a push-pull lens. And what I mean by that is if you look at like this 100 to 400 by Sony, if you're going to 400, it's pushing that out to get that zoom range. And if I had that on here, this wouldn't work because this is very stationary. It doesn't push out. So if I'm gonna push out, this would actually hit the filter and it just won't work. So you have to have a specialized system for this matte box to work, but this is by far and away your best option for the best quality. There are a couple of trays holders or tray slots up here. And then what I do is I carry 4 different filters with me when I'm in the field, and I go all the way from 0.3 to 1.2. So I can cut 1 stop all the way up to 4 stops. And the cool thing about this system is you can run 2 filters if you really need to cut a lot of light. And basically what that does is, let's say I put in the 1.2, and then I could say, I just need 1 more stop that I could put at the 0.3. So I can cut multiple stops of light by running 2 different filters. I'm not as worried about using 2 filters as I am with, I said this could be kind of bad when you're using 2 filters, 2 polarizers, just because you're running through 2 different pieces of glass. This, you're not running 2 polarizers, you're just stacking neutral density, and you still maintain image quality. As long as you buy the good filters, you're good to go as far as quality. And then you can get whatever you need as far as your shutter speed and then your frames per second that you're gonna be shooting. So to wrap it up, I think the best thing is dig into these variable neutral densities. Most people have this type of a system, a DSLR system. This is fairly inexpensive. Adding neutral density is gonna get you the footage that you want. As you can see, there's so many ways to do it. What we'll do is in the description below, we'll put in some links to some of the products that we use so that you don't get caught up in buying one of the cheaper variable neutral densities. Or if you want to try one of these other systems, we can put some links in there. You can check it out. And if you decide that's the best system for you, that's the best way to go. If you have any questions about anything we talked about, just throw a comment down below and we'll get to it. We'll either cover it in another video or I'll just answer it in the comments and try to give you any information that I can. As video gets more and more popular, everybody should be using neutral density to achieve the look that you want. So get out there and shoot some video.